Everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the AlumniConnect session. And we have some wonderful participants here with us today, wonderful alumni who've been a part of this group and who have gone out to conquer the world, as I would like to say. And they're doing very well in their respective fields and whatever they are associated with. They're going to tell you what they're doing on their own. So I'm going to first invite Hadia Shaukat to come in and tell us a little about herself.
Thank you,
Hadia.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. So I'm Hadia. I graduated from School of Education in the same year in 2022. And since then, I've been working in school evaluation and monitoring with Punjab Group of Colleges. So they have started a new initiative, which is called STEP Schools. And it is basically based on project-based learning. So I'm leading the evaluation and school monitoring and trainings department there. And what we do is that we're trying to develop a monitoring system there, which is, holistic in nature and covers all the aspects of schools. So like administration, co-curricular activities, school-based professional development, administration, and so on. And, one thing that I'm really trying to do there is that we want to develop a system in which the schools are equal stakeholders. Because, if you worked in schools, you would know that school evaluation and monitoring ka ek bahut dar hota hai, and they feel like if somebody is coming from school evaluation and monitoring, so probably they feel like, there's some kind of inspection that's going to go on. So what, we're trying to do there is that we're trying to redesign the entire system in such a way that the schools have an equal say in the entire process and they're an equal stakeholder. And and also like along with that, I'm also involved in conducting need-based training. So we do thorough TNA every year, and we come up with the needs which our teachers have. So currently we're running trainings around lesson planning, we're doing trainings around PBL, active learning, and so on. So yeah, that's more or less what I'm currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadia. That's quite a lot. Now we're going to ask Mariam Muzammil to come in and talk about herself. Mariam, are you there?
All right. Assalamu alaikum. I am Mariam Durrani.
Mariam Durrani. I'm so sorry.
That's perfectly fine. I graduated I'm from the batch of 2021 of the LUMS MPhil program in leadership and management. I am currently working with the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training as Assistant Educational Advisor with the National Curriculum Council Secretariat. And I started almost a year back in December. So it's almost been a year. And my work primarily entails giving academic expertise to for all 4 verticals of the curricular reform project. So which is standards, textbooks, teaching, teacher training, and assessments. And so right now, as we move into the 3rd stage of the curricular reform project, we're looking into teacher training and assessments, and I'm overseeing the development of assessment frameworks for grades 6 to 8.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mariam. And now I would ask Adnan Tariq to introduce himself and tell us a little about what he's doing.
Thank you, Sonia, for having us. It's always a pleasure to come to SOE and connect with everyone over here. So I am currently working as a program manager at Amal Academy, and my work entails administering, implementing, and supervising all aspects of Amal Career Prep Fellowship program. So the target audience for this program are final year undergraduate students or students who have graduated and are looking for a job. So this Career Prep Fellowship is actually a platform for them, for those students to work on their soft skills and to get themselves prepared for the job market through, these career prep sessions. And primarily, I am facilitating those sessions and working with fellows, and particularly on the skills that are underdeveloped in our traditional education and conventional education system.
Thank you, Adnan. So yes, all 3 of you are doing wonderfully well in your fields. So I'm going to ask you a question, and anyone feel free to answer. I'm not going to name call, and you can just answer as you want to develop your response. Is this what you really wanted to do? What you're doing right now? Did you have this in mind when you took up this program?
I think I'm going to jump at this opportunity.
Yeah.
So I remember I wrote in my personal statement for the MPhil when I was applying that I wanted to develop and I wanted to be a part of. So I've always enjoyed conversations around complex problems when people think out loud and they're like, you know, ye education system ka kuch nahi ban sakta, Pakistan ka hai nahi, we don't just don't have it, you know. And I remember I found a name for it in one of our classes, which was arts and education, and they're called wicked problems, where your variable is forever changing and it's unrecognizable, it's always changing, you have incomplete information and you have to work with the problem. And I think fortunately I've landed exactly there. so we're looking at the national curriculum and we're trying to craft minimum standards which work and which are flexible enough for provinces to mold them into their own as they like. So I think I would definitely say that this is what I always wanted to do, and SOE has given that opportunity to also understand how to conduct yourself in such a situation. So definitely.
So where do yes, anyone else? Hadia?
Yeah, so I just wanted to agree with Mariam as well that when I joined the MPhil program, before that I was working with the elite private schools like Beacon House and City School, and I did not have any exposure to the larger majority of the schools that are in Pakistan, like low to middle cost private schools. And one of the reasons why I joined the program was to learn about education policy and about how the other side of the schools work and what are their problems and how can I contribute to their development. So after doing my MPhil, I got a lot of exposure, and I was very inspired by the course that Dr. Gulab was giving, which was School Effectiveness and Development, so where we had a lot of exposure working with low to middle cost private schools, and we did a lot of projects for them as well. So from there, actually, I really thought, that this is one area I would really want to work on. And the school where I'm currently working with is also a middle cost private school. And along with that, I am working on my own startup along with my other batch fellows, and I'm in Maham, and we are specifically providing consultancy services to low-cost private schools in Punjab right now. So this is exactly what I wanted to do, and I think SOE helped me a lot in achieving that. Yeah.
Right, Adnan, what would you like to say about this? Have we lost Adnan?
Adnan's connection got disconnected. He's connecting again.
Okay, not a problem. Meanwhile, Hadia, I would like to ask you to develop a little more on when you said that you received that exposure, or you've been given that exposure at SOE. So would you like to kind of elaborate on that exposure? What kind of exposure, and how did you, get benefit from it?
Yeah, so like the very first, exposure with these schools was in the school, in the course which I mentioned. So there was a school based in outskirts of Lahore, with whom we were working as a group, and we had to develop a professional development guide for them, for their teachers. So, we started visiting that school. Once we entered that school, there were a lot of misconceptions on our side that were also addressed. So, most of the time when you go to these schools, you do feel like, maybe the teachers there are not enough qualified, maybe they don't want to work. But the first misconception that was addressed there was that these schools really want to change their teaching and learning practices, and the teachers are very motivated as well. It's only that they do not have a lot of resources. And so we worked during that course to devise a professional development program for them, which which was not dependent on us. So like, if we are not there anymore, the school can even take forward it on their own. So we worked for like 4 to 5 months with them, and we got a really good response from the teachers and the school administration as well, and they were, able to implement that in some way. So I think in that sense, the School of Education, and not only in this course, there were multiple other opportunities as well, where we could really go in the field and, understand that how the education system really works and what are the dynamics. And obviously, some of the other courses like the leadership course, which we took with Dr. Mariam Durrani, it was, I know, like, it really taught us that how the actual corporate life, or how things work there and how you're supposed to manage things there as well. So there are a lot of dynamics of leadership going on there as well, and how to because obviously once you graduate from there, you might be part of a team or you might be leading teams as well. So when you're leading teams, there are a lot of dynamics happening there as well. So I think in that terms also, there was a lot of like grooming being done in that leadership course as well. So overall, I think that it just like prepared us like what was to come in the real working experience life. Yeah.
And do you think it gave you an insight of the actual practice? Because there is a difference between theory and practice. So when you get to see it and experience it firsthand, do you think that makes a difference?
Yeah, it does. So like, I was working in the education sector for past 8 years, but I think I did not had that much insight into the overall education sector in Pakistan because I was working in very niche area. So I think that all of the courses that we took here, they were not like very increasing, very heavily theoretically. There was always some practical component added to it. So that made a lot of difference. Like, it was really an eye-opening experience at how things are being done, the educational policy, what are the issues, and how there's always solution-oriented lens that should be taken. So I think that was one key takeaway, because a lot of times you'll hear, whenever you're reading the editorials as well, or you're talking to people, they're always like, okay, there are this problem in the education sector, this, but SOE taught me that what solution can you bring to those problems, and that is what we should be focused on.
Problems we all know, and they're piling up by the day, but then what are the solutions? So thank you, Hadia, for that. Adnan, you're back. So would you like to now tell us, is this what you really wanted to do?
I would say that this whole
Is Adnan here with us?
I think he's dropped off. His screen is closed.
Sanya, I think he got disconnected.
Okay, again. So we'll go back to Mariam. Mariam, you just talked about all this that you really wanted to do, and you got to do this through the SOE. So how would you like to narrate that journey and talk about the various landmarks that you got to see in that journey?
So I think one thing that I is perhaps different from my colleagues, fellow panelists, I think is that I came back to academia and to my academic career after a hiatus, after a break of about 6 to 7 years, where I was in the non-formal sector. I was still teaching, although it was pro bono. And I wasn't, so, it didn't count as experience as such. And so I think there were 2 or 3 things that are absolutely very unique to SOE, which really helped carve out my path. So I think one of them was that when I was looking for graduate programs, I applied to a number of places locally, and a lot of them needed a prerequisite, which was at least that of a B.Ed or an M.Ed. And they would require that you have some sort of background in education, even an undergrad in education. And SOE did not have that prerequisite, which was a big plus, because I think for one, that helped me, but I think also the way that it played out in the classroom was that we had people from an engineering background, we had people from a biochemical background, and we had teachers, we had practicing teachers, we had school leaders. So I think the way that enriched the classroom discussion and how we were able to understand different perspectives was just remarkable. And I think that wouldn't have happened if all of us were coming from a similar stream. So that was one thing. And second thing, again, that played out specifically in my case was that obviously when you're off on a career break and you're not getting paid, it's very difficult to fund your graduate schooling and your graduate studies. So another thing that again is perhaps very unique to SOE is that all of our entire batch of about 36 that were on some form of scholarship, a merit-based scholarship. So that also helped bring in a lot of people back into, their professional careers based on, that sort of support that SOE was offering. So I think those two factors really played in. And as far as the academics go and the courses go, I think each and every course, I remember a lot of my fellow classmates were a little disgruntled in the beginning around, that we're not being trained specifically in one skill. So we want to, when people are interested in monitoring and evaluation, they want to be trained in R, and they want to be trained in Stata, and they want to be trained like, they want the rigor in it. And the same goes for academic writing, people aspiring to pursue a PhD. But I think the way that it was designed was that it gave you a breadth of subjects. And now that I'm working smack in the middle of, a government institution where every single day we're sort of battling issues and struggling, all of those courses have a role to play. So if I look at problems like how do we at a systemic level, if we're looking at something, the leadership course, in which we were kind of trained to identify and diagnose problems at a systemic level. So what's going on? Who are the players? What do they want? What are their interests? And then also to study how you can fit into that big system. You're not just a clog. You're going to find your way and enable yourself to lead without authority. So you don't have any authority, but you will figure out a way to sort of make that space in the system. I think that was absolutely the value of that cannot be challenged in any way. And then similarly, like Hadia mentioned, Dr. Gulab's course, we were talking just recently, we're going into a partnership with Sindh, where we're developing a teacher training program, teacher professional development. And, everyone wants to use these buzzwords, the cascade model and all of that. But what we remembered from that course was that you have to go as close to the teacher as possible. Your training has to be as closely aligned with the teacher as possible. You can't have multiple layers in the system of training. So I think these sort of things, they play out every single day. And I think every course had some sort of has added to my productivity in this role.
Thank you, Mariam. Adnan, you're back finally, and I hope you're back to stay. So now, how would you describe this? Is this
right? Yeah, so I was talking about the role of SOE. So I was telling that it has been very transformative in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience, and the research opportunities that we get during our studies. So if we talk about most importantly, this course at SOE helped me to understand the dynamics of education sector, because I believe that before we take any steps or any action steps to bring any transformative change, it's very important to understand the needs of the stakeholders, right? So if we call it leadership course or school effectiveness and development, all these courses help me to understand the underlying issues in the education sector. So there was a course called Observing Schools, which we did by analyzing the notes that were taken by the previous cohort. So, coding and then understanding the underlying themes of the notes and what are the needs and requirements of the institutes and how they are operating functional in the way they are doing, or what are the practices that are going on. These all the things I believe that very important for us before we introduce our invention, before we take any step. So if we talk about Dr. Gulab's course, then, school effectiveness and development, the prompt that was given to us to work on, right? When we actually went to the admin and when we talked about their issues and the pain points, they actually wanted to work on other things. So, having that conversation, getting to know what is their perspective, and then working on those target issues, I think that is very important. So, yes, the whole understanding of the dynamics of the system, and then the target audience, and then the stakeholders, I think these help us shape our perspective and then eventually prepare us for the things that we want to do and what I am doing right now. So my job actually involves working directly with fellows, working directly with students. And, it's very important for me to understand and analyze the needs of the students so that I can guide them properly. So, yeah, I would say that yes, it has absolutely helped me a lot in um, framing my way in positioning myself where I am right now.
Right. So now again, this question is for the three of you and for all the other participants who are listening in as well. Do you feel you are on sure ground now? You have sound footing, and now where do you see yourself headed 5 years, say, from here? So do you think that journey has begun and it has begun on sound footing? And if it has, how do you define that sound footing? Anyone?
I think I'd like to go with that.
Okay. Yes, Adnan, go ahead.
Yeah. So as far as sound footing is concerned, so I believe that we have gotten that framework, right? And the process of learning never stops. So I see myself as I have worked during my practicum, working on a research project. I worked with a College for Women Chakwal. And during that research project, I developed that way of observing things. And now what I find myself doing is that even when I'm working at Amal Academy, I observe the fellows. I try to understand from a research point of view, not as a facilitator, but as a researcher. So I believe that this thing has been embedded in me that yes, you have to work as a facilitator. You have to implement and supervise the curriculum. But along that, what are the new things? What is that additional component that I can bring along with my work? Something that I think I have gotten from SOE, right? So yes, I believe I am learning with every passing day, and this process is, I think, going to go on forever.
So are you trying to say that that learning process that you have gone through during this MPhil program is still with you, and you see yourself continuing to grow in your career using that learning process? Or do you think that has kind of something that you have left behind?
Okay, so yes, this process is continuing with me, and I am going to take the methods of research that I have studied forward with me for further research that I plan to take on in upcoming years. So yes, it is with me, and is now a part of me now. Nobody can take that away.
Yeah, thank you. It's internalized. Yes, anyone else? Hadia, yes.
Yeah, I would also agree with Nan that obviously it has provided us with a framework, but I also think that it gave us a push and it gave us a lot of perspective as well. So when I went back into the field, when I went back into the education sector, I did feel that there was a lot of perspective that I was bringing in, which was, I wouldn't say which was lacking, but I feel like, when you're running things on daily basis, so kahin na kahin, it just is subsided. So for example, even in school monitoring and evaluation, the system they already had in place was based on a lot of accountability and a lot of checks and balances, and like a very typical evaluation and monitoring system. But obviously, we were trained in a very different way in SOE. So where we were taught to take on stakeholders on board and to give each and every stakeholder an equal footing in that. So it took a lot of time to inculcate those values in the organization I'm working, but it's a slow step. And obviously day by day we're also learning. It's like Adnan said, that it's a continuous process for us as well of learning. And since there are so many challenges in the education sector, every day is a new challenge, to be very honest. But I think it has provided us with that perspective to how to take things forward and how to be, how to achieve those things as well. So I think that is really important.
Thank you, Hadia. Mariam, would you like to say something regarding this?
So I think I'm going to take my cue from Adnan and Hadia and say that I don't think that the strong footing has been achieved as yet, but I remember one of my mentors also happens to be our director at the NCC, Dr. Mariam Durrani. I remember when she was hiring me, she said, you're going to feel more incompetent than you're used to and that then more than you anticipate over here. And I think the government machinery is pretty hard to decode. At times you feel like you're making progress and then all of a sudden you're thrown into and you're just wondering, okay, up next, what's next? So I think if I look back, which I honestly haven't had the time to do, but if I look back, I think there have been small wins and they give me some sort of reassurance that that there will be impact and there will be, but I think to answer your question, I can only answer it once there is impact and once there is some positive output of what we're trying to achieve. So that's my understanding.
And is that impact with you? Will that take you further? Or will it be with you when, as you progress towards?
Of course, the learning is there. Of course, the learning is there, so definitely, yes.
All right. Before I move on to the last part where you talk about some advice, there's a lot of research work that you have gone through from the beginning of the program. And of course, you realize that in education, research is an ongoing thing. It's not going to end. So how do you personally, how have you personally developed that interest in research through this program? Or how well have you understood the significance of research and then ultimately finding solutions? So anyone?
So I think I'll go. Okay. I think, so my background was, originally I did my undergrad in economics. And that was very sort of, statistical, number-based, all of that. And so my understanding of research was colored by thinking that, it's all about statistics and it's all about numbers and number crunching and generating data. And then when I moved into, when we were doing research during the MPhil, we were taught research methods, and then we understood that, okay, no, not really, like, it wasn't an awakening, but we understood how it was done with more detail. We understood qualitative research. But I think one interesting elective that I took was arts and education. And that taught you about action research and about creating art pieces and doing and getting data out of that. And, it's so one is with numbers, and then there's words, and then there's experience, and, sort of generating data from creating experience. And I just recently, just yesterday, I was with my team and we were working on this community building project, a small little pilot that we're doing. And in that, I wanted to, we developed an audio, which was something to do with teacher feedback, how teachers give feedback and how negative feedback impacts the child. So we created this audio in which we're saying all of these negative sentences, and it develops into this cacophony of words that are all negative, and then you sort of expose the audience to this, and then you get their feedback on it. How does that make you feel, and how do you think it makes the student feel, and why do you think the teacher does that? So sort of generating data out of experience. So I think one absolute gem that I acquired at SOE was that research can be done in more than one ways, and it really depends on the researcher how they want to craft that and what kind of data they want to generate. So that was my experience, and I really enjoyed conducting that sort of research during my time here.
Well, thank you, Mariam. Quite insightful. Hadia, Ji.
I would also like to, add to Mariam that, so for example, one of the things I did mention earlier as well, that I'm working with some of my other batch fellows on a consultancy that we have initiated, which is, regarding school improvement. So, so we are dealing with a lot of clients there. So whenever, you're going to schools and you're working with clients, you have to show them something. And you obviously, since you are working for them, you also have to design some programs for them. And whenever you're designing the programs for them, you have to back it through research, right? Otherwise, you cannot convince them that what kind of changes are required in the school, because sometimes you're asking them that they need to, that the problem might not be with the teachers, the problem might actually with the school administration and the leadership, right? So that's a very hard thing for them to take in. And that's where, you bring in all the research and you have to back all your work with the research. And I think one of the courses I took, which was ethnography with Dr. Sophia, it gave me a lot of perspective, because like Mariam said, that initially in my bachelor's as well, I had done a lot of quantitative research, but there was not a lot of qualitative research. So throughout these 2 years, we got a lot of exposure for, different ways in which qualitative research can be done, and how, little things like little observations are also very important. Like whenever you step inside the school, right, from stepping inside the school till you're back out again, each and everything you observe how important that is. And I think usko kehte hain na, like that observant eye. I think I was lacking that before. So there's such little observations, and when you think about those and the impact that can have. So I think qualitative research was one thing which I would definitely say was a great learning with the program.
Right, over to you, Adnan. What would you say about this?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Hadia, and I actually also got the opportunity to study that course, Ethnography for Education Policy by Dr. Sophia. So yes, the eye for detail, the ethnographic perspective that we developed during the course, during the observations, all the components that might seem so casual to a regular person, but revisiting and then revisiting and then coming again with a new perspective is something that I have developed, an ethnographic eye for detail. And yes, this is the component that I actually utilized during my practicum capstone as well. Because when you are in the field, when you are working with students, when you're working with teachers, admin, you need to look into all of these details and the perspectives, understand that where they're coming from. And it helps us to identify the problem, the pain point, and then advise the solutions accordingly. So yes, this is something that I am going to take away.
Thank you. Now, what kind of advice would you give to for the program for SOE? Because looking back, you've come a long way and you still have a long way to go. And of course, as any program or any part of life, there are ups and downs and glitches and all that. So do you have any advice that you would like to give to SOE or the program, and also to the students who are currently doing this MPhil program and the upcoming batches also?
I'd like to add that first.
Yeah, sure.
So for SOE, being very specific, I would say that there should be an open call for research projects by the faculty or by the team, so that students who are interested can reach out directly to them. Why I'm saying this, because we started in COVID, like half the time was online, and the second half during that time we had access to campus. We got the chance to meet the faculty, even our class fellows. So things were challenging in that time. And we all were learning. I would say that we were the pioneers of studying in COVID. And I sometimes really feel proud of that, because this is the hybrid model that is applicable now in every part of the world. It's globally accepted. Even now I'm working hybrid. So this is good. So, but things at that time were very challenging, and there was a feeling that I had that maybe we do not see those resources as much as if we could have been like on campus. And the opportunities at that time were very limited. But now I see that there's a lot happening, like SOE professional development courses are there, and then a lot of work going on. So if I consider my time at that point, I feel that there should have been an open call for research projects. And I still believe that even now there should be some open call for those kind of projects, because there are two things that, yes, we have that component of research in our coursework and everything else, but when we are working directly with faculty, then it gives us a professional experience that helps a lot. It helps us to develop the insight of how things are working. Coursework mein to hum we are doing it for the sake of course, eventually we know that. But when we are working on a real problem with a faculty member, then that perspective, that learning that we develop is something that stays for forever, right? So that's my advice for SOE.
Right.
And should I go for
the students? Yes, go ahead and tell them whatever you want.
One thing, yeah. So one thing I would tell all of them, that enjoy the process and focus on the learnings, right? My favorite part of being at SOE was working on the practicum project at Akuat College, and I really enjoyed my work. So there was a time when I felt that we are not making any progress, kuch bhi nahi ho raha, koi kaam nahi ho raha. But by the time we reached, and by the time we had meetings with stakeholders and understood the project and identified the actual pain point and the perspective and needs of the organization, then we realized that yes, as we proceeded with little steps and the time that we were able to deliver our final project, we realized that we had come a long way. We were able to devise that module for teachers, for the organization and the institute, and we were able to talk about it in our practicum conference and the presentation, the final presentation. So I would say that focus on the learning, enjoy the process, and it's going to be great. When I look back, I learned the most when I was there, right? So that's an advice for the students as well.
Thank you. Hadia.
So my advice for SOE, on a very program level would be that although like we talked about how, we got a lot of exposure to qualitative research, and Mariam also talked about that she had a lot of experience in quantitative, and so did I. But a lot of students do come from background where they do not have a lot of exposure to quantitative research methods. And I felt like there should have been, more focus on that. And apart from that, also on impact evaluation, because, when you're working with the educational startups and also with the private schools or even in the government, it's all about impact evaluation there. So the impact evaluation tools should be with the students when they are graduating from the program. So I know that because, we spent our degree in COVID, so maybe, that could not happen there. But I think impact evaluation is one area which could be, explored in more detail, because that really helps you when you're designing programs, because wherever you go, you will be designing programs, you will be leading programs, you will be working on programs. And in the education sector, if you're not able to measure the impact of that, then there will be no as such a benefit out of it. So, and for the students, my advice would be, like Adnan said, take it one day at take one step at a time. Don't focus on what's to come. And okay, like I have talked to some of the juniors, and they are like they're very, very worried about their practicums. But I would like to say that we were also going through the same. And I think one mistake that we did, that we spent so much time stressing about the practicum itself, that we were not able to enjoy it. And by the time it's all done, you'll see that everybody will be able to do exceptionally great there. Everybody does get a lot of support in their practicums. So just enjoy the process, develop a lot of connections as well, because that does help you in your later, when you start working. And so it does provide you with a lot of networking opportunities. So take the best use of it. And then finally, I would also, one advice, because I've been working for the past couple of years in the education sector, I do feel like that whenever you want to work in any position, either that's in administration, at policy level with the government, or even at schools, you should have some sort of experience working inside the classrooms, because it does bring a lot of perspective. Because eventually when you're designing policy as well, it will be eventually for the teachers, for the students. So if any of you does get a chance to work inside classrooms, that will be great, because that brings a lot of perspective to your work. Yeah,
that's sound advice, Hadia. Thank you very much.
Very good advice.
Mariam.
So I want to start with the students first. I think I want to speak to the frustration that occurs during when you make the transition from an undergrad student to graduate school. I think when they say that, really one point that I want to drive home is that really the onus of your learning lies with you. And when teachers keep telling you, okay, you discuss it amongst yourselves and come up with solutions, you're like, what is this? Why do they keep throwing the work back at us? Whatever happened to teaching, right? So, but I think graduate school is different that way. You really have to take ownership of your research and of your interest, even in terms of faculty mentorship. You really have to step up and connect with faculty. You really have to reach out to them, try and engage with their research. A lot of our faculty members are actually very eminent figures within the education sector. They're doing a lot of work internationally also, locally also. So I think really students need to tap into that opportunity and use that time that they have at SOE. We sadly did not, because around spring break, we were asked to leave for spring break. And then later on, we came back after a year and a half later. so that, but I think when you're on campus, that opportunity is kind of more available. The second thing that I want to say is that post-COVID, the entire sort of fabric, the entire landscape has changed. So now you can find opportunities not just locally of hybrid work, but also internationally. And sometimes we don't even look that side, because we're so engrossed with finding something over here. But that's definitely an opportunity that we need to sort of explore. We can, and also as an institution, I think SOE perhaps should venture into expanding their portfolio in what they offer as opportunities to their students. So that's something that I really want to highlight. The third thing is student linkages. So I remember when we came in, we were second to the inaugural batch. And Babar Saab mentioned that, his vision for SOE was that he wanted people to get into, like 5 years later, he wanted people in every sector, like SOE graduates, alumnus, alumni in every sector. And so then they would create synergies and they would connect with one another and, sort of impact the education sector. So I think also because of my own personal ulterior motive of being the alumni association, I think that is something that we're also planning to, further work on. We really want students to engage with, come back and talk about their ideas and connect with one another across departments, across sectors, and try and do something for the education sector in Pakistan. So I think that's my 2 cents on what the students can do.
And what about SOE? Any advice?
So SOE, I think really to expand their portfolio in terms of what they offer to the students, what kind of job opportunities, are available. Considering, especially now that work from home and remote work is so in vogue right now.
Right. Thank you very much. One last thing that I would personally like to bring in, because students feel overwhelmed, as did you when you were going through this process. So do you think there's a short word of advice or some guidance that you could give them? What to do when they feel overwhelmed? Just to let them know that it's okay, it's going to, ultimately settle down. It's going to, as you said, like the cogs in the wheel, it's going to make sense. But currently, when they're feeling overwhelmed, what should they do?
Yeah, so I think, firstly, I think it's very, very normal to feel overwhelmed, especially, when you're having your practicum. We were also like, I think everybody I knew at SOE was overwhelmed at that time. And, I could tell what I used to do. Sometimes I just used to take a break, pause, and just disconnect for that time, because when you're disconnecting, your mind is free. And then, you can come back with a fresh perspective. So like if you're feeling overwhelmed with the practicum, just take a break for a day or two, disconnect, do something you like, maybe go out for a walk, maybe go out for a spa or yoga, do anything that you like, maybe read a book, and then just come back. And, that really helped me at least, that's the advice I give.
Thank you, Hadia. Mariam, what would you say?
Okay,
I remember really short.
My standard SOP was going to Sara and lamenting about my situation. But I think reach out for help. I would say reach out for help. There's a lot more help available at LUMS than it used to be back when I was an undergrad student. So I think reach out for help. definitely. And also reach out to fellow classmates. I think a lot of times we can get help just by way of talking to someone and venting. So yeah.
Adnan, what would you say?
Amazing advices by Hadia and Mariam. I would say, Hadia, that after disconnecting, before coming back to work, have a balcony view and analyze the things that are happening. And yes, talking to people would also help, but go to the balcony, have a view, have an overview and how the things are happening, and then maybe you would be able to develop a better perspective. So yeah.
So thank you very much, Adnan and Hadia and Mariam. And this has been very insightful, and it has really opened. There were a lot of questions that I needed to ask, but you automatically answered them. So that's wonderful. Now I open the forum for questions. Any one of you who would like to ask a question, you may raise your hands, and then any of the participants, if you want to ask a particular participant is fine. Otherwise, if it's an open question, just let us know. So Rahma, you want to say something?
Yes, first of all, guys, I have to say you guys were so elaborate in everything that you told. You literally covered everything that could possibly have been spoken about. So good job on that. My question is for Mariam and for Hadia also. So Hadia, I want to ask you that since you're in the monitoring and evaluation sector, and that's something that I'm also interested in, and you also mentioned that impact evaluation is something that could have been covered in more detail in at the SOE, and I resonate with your thought entirely. I also believe that impact evaluation is something that should be taught. Hamare batch ko bhi nahi karaya. But what do you think are some of the skills within monitoring and evaluation that SOE students can build up on their own if we're not getting that training at the through the degree? I mean, are there any specific programs or software that we need to learn? Is there anything, any specific skill, I would just say, that we can do? And Mariam, I would like to ask you, since you're working with the government and within the development sector in general, it's usually said that working in this sector is very, very sort of consuming in the sense that work-life balance पे काफी ज़्यादा impact आता है. Can you say a little bit about that, and how are you managing that? Is it possible to manage that? I don't know if your otherwise commitments, but I'm a mother. I have 2 children, and this is I also intend to work with the government at some point in time in my life whenever I can. So how does that work?
Yeah, thank you, Rama, and it's a really good question. I would like to say that even like if you're not, being offered the course right now, there are a lot of impact evaluation models which you can, easily go on your own as well. So like you can explore the Gusky model, and there are some others as well. And it's like once you're done with the degree, you'll find it very easier to explore all of these models on your own as well. But given, saying that, there are a lot of other skills that SOE will teach you that will really help you with school monitoring and evaluation. So for example, one of the greatest skills, like Adnan has already talked about, is the observation skill. So, when you go for monitoring visits, when you go for evaluation visits, all you're going to do is you're going to observe, right? And then you're going to fill out your rubrics or whatever standards you have developed. So, and SOE will train you a lot on how to do observations. And then also, another thing, very important thing, is that SOE is offering a lot of courses on, teaching methodologies. There was one course which was being offered by Dr. Lorna as well. There's another course offered by Dr. Mariam Heather as well. So eventually you need to remember that school monitoring and evaluation, maybe you're going to assess those practices, right? So all of that is being taught in SOE. You just need to have some guidance on how to develop a framework regarding that, which will come to you even if you graduate and you join a monitoring and evaluation unit, which you will learn on your own. But the important thing is to know how to do qualitative research, how to do observations, and how to analyze data as well. So I think that is already being provided in the degree as far as I know.
Gee, thank you, Rehma. I think that's a very, very pertinent question. I'm also a mother to 2 kids. My kids are 8 and 10. I think, so one thing about work-life balance is that it really depends on you. So government officials generally, if there's one thing they're very, very sure of, it's the cutoff time. So 4 o'clock is cutoff time. The office will just clear out like nobody's business, okay? And everybody will be at home. But I think when you're relatively, if you're working remotely or otherwise, what helps is to, so we follow a project management application. It's called Asana, and we list down all of our tasks for the day on it, and then we work task by task. So we're not, it's not like we're scrambling to get everything done, or that one person is overburdened. It's generally divided in a way, and we have a check-in in the morning. Everyone is assigned whatever they need to do by the end of the day. And so it's very important to kind of be a little firm on those SOPs of how you're going to function, because I think not just for the government sector or the development sector, I think for any job. Also, one point that I wanted to add to the last question about being a little overwhelmed at graduate school or at SOA in particular, I think at the end of the day we need to remember that this job or the education that we're receiving or whatever degree we're pursuing, it's just one aspect of our lives. So it kind of adds to value to our lives in general, but it's not the be all end all of who we want to be. So I think it's always good to draw those boundaries, and it works everywhere, and just as it does in the government sector.
Rama would still like to ask one more question. So please go ahead, Rama.
Yes, thank you, Sanya. So my question is from Mariam again. Mariam, because you're in the government sector, and again, it's also said to be very, very competitive, and the spots are limited. A lot of people are applying. Are there any particular points that we can highlight in our CV? Any work experience, of course, everybody likes to highlight, but anything that sort of sets your resume apart from the others, and it sort of prompts the hiring manager to pick up your resume and look at it. I feel like a lot of us do apply, but part of the process, but a lot of people don't get to hear back also. So anything that you would like to recommend in that area?
So that's a really good question. Again, I think so when I applied, I had absolutely no expectation of being called. I even remember discussing with one of my faculty members at Plums that, should I even be applying? And they were like, just do it nonetheless. I mean, just do it just take the chance and just see what happens. But I think what you've mentioned and what you need to highlight really depends on what kind of opening it is. So if you're for the kind of position that I am at, which is the assistant education advisor, and it was with the NCC, so you would tend to highlight not just your academic understanding or your whatever experience you may have had in curriculum development, but also soft skills. So stuff like negotiation, stuff like leadership, what exactly? So a lot of people like to throw these words around, right? Leadership, negotiation, stakeholder mapping. Really need to know what sort of aligns with what they require. And so these things really, really matter. Also, some examples when you're writing your cover letter, some actual examples from your experience of why you think you're good for the job or you're a good fit for the job. So it really depends on the kind of opening that there is, and usually they give a brief, sort of requirement of what they want, and really play onto that, I think.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Fatma also wanted to ask something. Fatma, will you do that, or shall I ask? Fatima Tariq? Okay. Fatma wants to know wants you to elaborate on how to apply for such positions. Mariam.
Right. So I think I will also share something that I'm in the process of developing for our Alumni Association, which is a list of websites where they publish job openings. And even if you go to any government website, usually you see on the corner somewhere they do kind of flash that job vacancy announcement. Usually it comes in the papers. I applied through an ad that was shared on one of our groups, the SOE groups. But I think that it would be helpful if people from the sector would keep on sharing information as it comes. So I remember we did circulate an email recently, and some messages also as openings were coming up. But I think it would be helpful to share those websites with you, and I can do that in due time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone? Although the three of them have done a wonderful job of being as eloquent and as clear as they could possibly have been. And yes, Rabia. Rabia, you want to say something?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Wonderful session. I have been enjoying it since the beginning. Just wanted to ask something, like we are from 2024 executive cohort. So we haven't gotten a chance to visit the schools because we come there on Saturdays and Sundays, and we have been doing observation in a very, especially like I commute from Islamabad to Lahore. So I have been observing my own students. So the ethnographic notes and the autoethnographic things, I've been lost, and I'm glad that Noor is also here. She's our TA. So I feel I'm missing a lot. What do you think? So yeah, anybody go ahead and answer. Like, we haven't been to school. So I really want to observe students live. Like, so are we missing a lot or not?
Okay, so I think Mariam, Hadia, and Adnan could answer that because they have been observing schools, and they'll be able to make that distinction between not being able to visit a school and observe firsthand,
Yes,
and then not
exactly.
being.
Because
And then
they were
Noor is
like,
also
someone
here.
discussed that, yeah. That
Yeah,
has
so
been
then
very fruitful when it came to
fruitful.
practicum and all that stuff.
Okay, so would you like to elaborate on how you feel it has been very fruitful? Or just pick out on a couple of highlights that you think are extremely important?
Hadia, you want to take that?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I got the question rightly, but I think because when Rabia, we were doing our observing schools, it was lockdown. We were doing it online. We were not able to go to schools, but we were provided with field notes of other students before, of the previous batch who went into the schools. And though we did also have reservations about whether that will be fruitful or not, but trust me not, it was very, very helpful going through the notes of other students. And if I'm not wrong, you mentioned that you are observing your own students, right? You're going into your own school.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So so basically the idea behind ethnography or even observing schools is to develop the right skills. So you have to develop your observation skills. You have to develop the eye of an ethnographer. So I'm sure that when you attend these classes and when you go back to even your own school, you will be having a different perspective, right? Because I remember when I was doing ethnography, so one of the tasks for us was to go in a park, like which might be near our house. And I went there 1,000 times, literally. Okay? And then our assignment was to go back there and observe like in the way we were taught. And trust me, they were like, I had such great insights, some little observations, which I was never even focusing on before. So the idea behind all of this is to develop your skills, right? So even if you're going back into your own school, I'm sure that there must be something new, some new perspective that you will be getting after, having your classes and then applying those, theoretical or skills developed in your school.
Thank you. I'm definitely developing the skills. You're right there. You got the question right. Thank you so much.
Great, wonderful. So any other questions or anything that you would like to share? So any one of you, what would you like to say as a parting shot? I think it's about time that we're going to close this session. So that final word, that parting shot.
Yeah, I would just like to say, have a lot of fun in your degree. This time is not going to come back. A lot of us do spend our time stressing about these things, but every thing works out at the end. So enjoy your time. Learning is important, but having a good time is equally important as well. And all of the things do get sorted out at the end.
And I would like to add on here, learning, having fun through learning is even better. So make sure that the two are married to each other, and you're learning and you're having fun, and then you're having fun because you're learning. So make sure that that becomes your motto. So on this note, I'm going to thank the three participants, the three alumni, and the participants of on this session. And I bring the Alumni Connect for today to a close. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time and attention. And
Thank you
you
so
for
much,
having us.
Sania.
Thank you for
Thank
having
Thank
us.
you, and thank you,
Thank you all
Mariam,
for having
Hadia, and
us.
Adnan for a lovely
Thank
session.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, all of you.